Hey everybody, my name is Latham McKinney, and today we are talking about the top tips that I have to give to you guys on the country of Laos. As you can see, we've got the Beer Lao tank because I've spent the last 3 weeks traveling around Laos, and now we're in Lombok, Indonesia. But today we're talking about Laos. The tips, the tricks, the hacks, the don'ts, all that kind of stuff, all wrapped up into the top 10, top 15, however many tips we're gonna have today for me to give to you. And with that, let's get started. Tip number 1, as you're entering Laos, you need to make sure that the bills that you have, preferably US dollars, because it's just the best exchange rate. They, for whatever reason, desire US dollars. I think for Canadians it was 50, maybe 55 US dollars. Make sure that those bills, whenever you get them from the foreign exchange place or your bank back home, that they are in very, very good condition. Because mine had a slight tear, and as a Canadian who spent considerable time in the US, I didn't think anything of it, but I got there and they're like, no, we don't like this one. Actually, we don't like this one either. And then it was a big hassle because I had to go to an exchange place, exchange my US dollars for Lao Kip, and then I didn't have enough, or I did have enough, but I ended up losing like 10 American dollars in the transaction or something. It was a big hassle. So my point to you is whenever you get those US dollars or any currency that you're planning on exchanging for your visa on arrival, make sure it's in very good condition because they're super picky. Tip number 2 is on getting to Laos. A lot of times to get to Laos, like myself, you'll take a sleeper train either from Vietnam or Thailand. Those are probably the main ones. But if you're booking a sleeper train either in or out of Laos, make sure you book as far in advance as humanly possible. And I know sometimes things happen last minute, but expect that the sleeper cabins will book out 10 days to 2 weeks in advance. So if you're not in that window, you're probably looking at like a second class, or in my case, I booked the day of, and I only was able to get a third class, just like metal seat. Wasn't fun. So if you want a sleeper cabin for the 12, 13 hour train rides to get yourself to Laos, make sure you're booking that at least 10 days to 2 weeks in advance. Tip 3 is SIM cards. So there's a lot of stuff on social media right now about eSIMs and the benefits of eSIMs. Honestly, I'm not a fan of eSIMs. I'll be the first to say it. I honestly think that if people are on social media right now preaching eSIMs, they're probably being paid to do so, because eSIMs are just almost always considerably more expensive, and they're usually using B grade towers, meaning that they're probably getting service and buying service from the top tier. So the service and networks are often not that good unless you're in big cities. Sure, they're convenient, but you're just paying so much more than you need to. Even if you got a physical SIM card at an airport, you're still going to be better off, in my opinion. But that's not the tip. The tip in Laos is go to stores that are like the cell phone case, cell phone type stores. I know Oppo is a common brand, so if you can find an Oppo store in one of the main cities, that's where you'll get your SIM cards and probably get your best deals on SIM cards. You can't go to a convenience store like a 7-Eleven or something in Laos. It doesn't work like it does in Thailand. So go to like an Oppo, that's just the first one that comes to mind. They'll be your best bet for getting SIM cards in Laos. Tip 4, especially if you're coming from Thailand, is cannabis is very illegal in Laos. It's a big misunderstanding because you go to Thailand and it's so prominent, it's everywhere, that you're like, oh yeah, Laos so similar, northern Laos, northern Thailand, it's all the same, right? No, it's not. I've met people at hostels who have had cannabis on them and been arrested because they just either completely forgot or they were negligent. There are places in Laos where they'll kind of allow you to get away with it in certain bars, but those bars have like backdoor partnerships with the police and stuff, and it gets very hazy. Honestly, just don't even go there. It's not worth the risk because cannabis is very, very illegal in Laos, and consider that a mental note for you. On the note of cannabis and substances, I guess, local liquor. Now this goes for many, many countries, not just Southeast Asia. Honestly, just stay away from the local liquor. A few months ago, there was a tragic accident where I think it was 6 backpackers had died of methanol poisoning. Now, I wouldn't necessarily say that's an issue with Laos as much as it is just an issue with the way that that situation was handled, for one, and the way that local liquors and alcohols are often made, for two. But again, that's not a Lao thing. That could happen in Thailand, that could happen in Indo. So yeah, just honestly stay away from the local liquors in pretty much any country you go to. Get yourself a bottle of beer, anything bottled like soju, wine, whatever. It's gonna be, or brands of alcohol that you trust from back home in your home countries. Stick to those because you know they're a lot safer than just the random spirits that they don't even have names for, like Happy Water in Vietnam, right? Like, what alcohol is that, right? Like, if they don't actually have a proper name for it and they only call it Happy Water, I don't know how much of that we should be drinking. Tip number 6 is getting more into the nitty gritty here. If you're in Vang Vieng and you're planning on going to the Nam Se viewpoint, famous for the motorbike at the top, don't do sunset. You think that sunset would be really nice, but do sunrise. I'll show you footage of both. I did sunrise twice and sunset once. The differences are night and day, quite literally night and day. Sunrise, people don't want to wake up for it. Sunset, people are already awake for it, and that's a massive difference in how busy it is up there, and the whole experience is completely different. Sunrise, no one's on you for getting pictures. Sunset, it's like a lineup of 40 people that take a minute or 2 minutes each, and you're lucky to even get pictures during sunset at all. Never mind, just wanting to explore instead of just standing in line. So take it from me, who's done both multiple times. Do sunrise at Nam Se and don't do sunset. Timing wise, you want to leave Vang Vieng town on a scooter between 5 to 5:15 a.m. Get to the bottom of the viewpoint, hike up. That's your best timing for getting to the top in perfect timing to get all the colors and all the sunrise. Again, sunrise, if you're going to wake up early. Don't find 5 extra minutes or 10 extra minutes of sleep, because that could mean the entire difference of seeing all of the sunrise or absolutely none. And 5 or 10 minutes difference in sleep is not worth potentially missing it. So wake up earlier than you think you might need to and get yourself there on time. Tip 7 is Quang Si Falls in Luang Prabang. So Quang Si Falls is honestly one of the best waterfall experiences I've ever had. It really is, and I'll be the first to admit if something feels too touristy. The thing I'll say about Quang Si Falls is scootering there is a very solid option. If you can, do it, because then you have the freedom of being there as long as you really want to, and you're not time pressured at all. Bring a swimsuit, bring a towel. Obviously, there's a ton of different little pools and stuff to swim in, and I really recommend that you do. But the big tip is to get there before 10:30 to 11 o'clock, because that's when a lot of the tourist buses and shuttles start arriving, and it does get quite touristy. I was there when it was fairly touristy, and it wasn't bad. It was still an enjoyable experience, but if I were to do it again, I would go before 10:30 to 11 and just have a little bit more, of the place to myself. And on that note, I don't know if this is a new tip or just a sub tip to Quang Si Falls, is do not miss walking up to the top of the falls. It's incredible. It's like you would think, given the falls and the situation at the falls, that it would be kind of rapid and fast moving water because of the falls, but it's like this almost just super quaint, very chill mangrove situation. Go up there, have a couple drinks with friends, maybe go swimming up there. Really, really cool. And a lot of people that I met didn't go up there. And I'm like, oh, guys, you missed such a good element of it. You can go up the kind of rock scrambly section on the far side of the main falls, or on the near side when you're walking to them. You'll realize when you get there. Black staircase, look for it on the left. Find a black staircase. It's a much easier climb up and down to go on the black staircase versus the scramble on the other side. But please don't miss the top of the falls. It really is nice. And the bottom of the falls for that matter. Follow it down. Go down the scenic walk, I think it's called, or nature walk, just all the way down the cascading pools, and then it'll take you through the Sun Bear or Moon Bear Sanctuary. I think it's Moon Bear maybe. But there's a bear sanctuary, and make sure to check that out because it's all part of the same ticket. Tip 8 is on Blue Lagoons back in Vang Vieng. So there's 4 main Blue Lagoons, Blue Lagoon 1, 2, 3, 4. I think in total there's technically like 9 or something, but there's 4 fairly commercialized ones that people know about. 1, 3, and 4 are all the same in the sense that they lose the sun around 11, maybe 11:30 a.m. So because of their mountains that surround 1, 3, and 4, they are in the shade from 11:30 onwards, and although the water is not that cold and not as cold as you may expect, it is just nicer when you're in the sun. You come out and it's sunny instead of shady. So my recommendation is to do 3 And then on your way back from 3, it's literally on the same road as if you went from the town to number 3. Coming back, you just stop on that same road and do 2. Blue Lagoon 2 is in the sun until 3:30 or 4 p.m. So go ahead in the morning, late morning, go to, I would honestly recommend Blue Lagoon 3. That's just my personal take. It's just more of like an adrenaline seeker's place to hang out, less touristy, I would say. So I would recommend going to 3 in the morning, coming back, stopping at 2, and then hanging out there. It's more of a picnic vibe at number 2, and then coming back to town midday. Tip 9 is to never miss a sunset in Vang Vieng and Luang Prabang. Just go down to the riverside at sunset or even golden hour if you don't want to miss any of it, and find a different bar, find a different, restaurant, whatever you want to do. If you want to eat there, it'll be a little bit more expensive to eat there. Personally, I just enjoyed a drink or two during sunset, and then I ate after when it was dark, and I just go wherever I want, some place a little cheaper, maybe more authentic. But don't miss sunsets there because they're all super nice. Sure, they can be a little bit consistent, but sometimes you'll get ones that are a lot better than others, and you're like, oh wow, I'm really happy that I showed up tonight, because you never really know. And it's just a nice thing to do. Vang Vieng and Luang Prabang are both very chill, laid-back atmospheres, and it's like, what else, what better thing to do than just go with a couple friends and enjoy sunset. So I would really recommend not missing any. Tip 10 is near and dear to my heart. In Vang Vieng, Big Sexy Mama, not Big Mama, but Big Sexy Mama. I'll put footage here to show you exactly which one and pin where she is. She's the OG. She's a sandwich lady, crepe lady, smoothie extraordinaire in Vang Vieng, and I will die on the hill that she has the best sandwiches in all of Vang Vieng. I ate there 2 or 3 times a day, every single day I was there. And she's super nice. I could get into the whole nitty gritty on how hard she works for her family to support them. But she honestly, in my mind, makes the best sandwiches in all of Vang Vieng. So go and give her a try. You won't regret it. The next tip is a thing I actually haven't done, but I have some experience with, and that's the Tak Hek Loop. I've done other loops in other countries. Now, the Tak Hek Loop is kind of like the main loop, I would say, within Laos for scootering and like a multi-day situation. And this goes for a lot of other loops too. If you are going to scooter the Tak Hek Loop, just know that you need, technically, legally, you need an international driver's permit, and you also need, often, you need a motorcycle license in your home country, which will then get appended to your international driver's permit. The international driver's permit is more like the legal line, I would say, more or less, with cops and police in the local country. But the biggest tip here is if you do get in an accident, a lot of the insurance companies won't cover you at all if you were to get in an accident and not have your motorcycle license while driving a motorcycle. So that's the biggest issue here or concern, is just read up on what your country does and how your insurance policy works for those types of things, because I have met people who have had accidents and not been covered because they were just basically driving a motorbike without actually being able to drive a motorbike in their home country, which then translates to the international driver's permit you get and the license, and the insurance policy and what they'll protect. Next tip is concerning the hot air balloons in Vang Vieng. If you're booking a hot air balloon, just know that you kind of get what you're paying for, and I'd also recommend not doing it on the very last day that you go. Now, this is a personal experience I had. I booked with one of the local companies, and they really messed up the math, and they had 4 groups of us and only 3 balloons. So we ended up being the odd group out for whatever reason, and we didn't even get to go up that night. And so they just rescheduled us. They gave us a very small refund to do it, but some of the people I was with, it was their last night, and so they didn't have an opportunity to do it for sunset the following day. They had to do sunrise, and it was a big thing because they had other plans for sunrise and so on. But just book it earlier than not and do it earlier than not, just in the random case that does happen to you. I will say that once we did get up, I was very safe. Everything was good. I enjoyed the experience I had, but it was just a day delayed, and so try not to put yourself in that situation where that might happen to you. Personally, I wanted to book with the local companies versus the French company Above Lao, which many people do. Most of the people that I was in a hostel with did Above Lao because, oh, it's a French company, European safety standards. They just felt safe doing it. And there was this whole marketing thing where it's like they go into the mountains versus in town. I wanted to be in the parade of balloons and kind of like take videos of other balloons, because it's cool to take a video of a balloon, but if you're above a balloon and take videos, it's like, well, how'd you get that? Oh, you must have been in a balloon. It's just like a cooler perspective, I think, to be in a parade of balloons and kind of have that experience. Kind of like Cappadocia is like the whole appeal there is not one balloon in the sky, but hundreds, and you get to be one of those hundreds. So I wanted that experience of one of the local companies, but to each their own. Tip being, don't do it on your last day, just in case things happen, weather happens, whatever. The next couple tips are regarding the LCR, or the Lao-China Railway. It's a fairly new railway that China helped the government of Lao build from southern China, or like central China, down into Laos, all the way through to Vientiane, which is the capital of Laos. So first thing, if you are booking, which I do recommend, it's a pretty cool experience and it's very easy, is book using their app, because it is the cheapest way to book. And also book in advance, because there are times where it'll book out a few days ahead, especially on weekends. So if you do need to get between one city to the next on a certain day, just book it in advance, at least maybe like a day or two, obviously, or more. But if you don't want to take the train, this is like maybe a sub tip, there is the shuttle bus or minivan situation. And that can actually be beneficial because it's cheaper, but you also, not only is the actual fare cheaper, but you also don't have to pay for the shuttle to get you from a town like Vang Vieng town to their their train station, or Luang Prabang town to its train station, because that's going to run you like 200K. And if you're not splitting that with people, that's already more than the actual train ticket itself. Whereas if you book with the minivan or shuttle bus, then they will pick you up right at your hostel and you don't have to worry about that cost. So it can actually be considerably cheaper depending on your circumstances. And you also don't have to worry about the maybe half an hour drive from the train station to the city that you're going to. In my case, I went from Vang Vieng town to Vientiane, but instead of taking the train, which would have still left me half an hour from Vientiane city, half an hour, 100,000 kip car ride, I went straight on the bus to the airport, which was my end destination. So it ended up working out more conveniently for me. The bus was pretty crammed, so it is like a little bit of a trade-off. I would recommend you try the train at least once, because it is a cool experience and it's very clean and sophisticated, which will actually lead us into the next tip, which is regarding the LCR and their security. Now, I haven't had it happen to me, but the security, just like airports and airplanes, they're quite adamant about aerosols and sometimes liquids. I had liquids with me. They didn't care. It wasn't a concern. Liquids over the 100 ml that airports allow. So that wasn't an issue. But a lot of my friends were concerned with the aerosol thing. I think they were more adamant about the aerosols. If you do have aerosols you really care about, I can't even think of any that come to mind. I think a guy that I met had like €100 aftershave that he was really concerned about, which I didn't even know was a thing. But if you do have things that you really care about and you're like, I can't afford to lose this, go to a local post office and just wrap it up and just ship it ahead of yourself to your next destination via like local post. I knew a few people that did that. Next tip is regarding scootering and how beginner friendly Lao really is for scooters. If you're new to scootering or you haven't scootered before at all, like if you're in the beginning stages of scootering, Laos is one of the most friendly countries to try to learn how to scooter, because it is such a, in my mind, vital element of being able to backpack Southeast Asia to the fullest extent. The roads are not hilly. There's like a couple turns here and there, but in the grand scheme of things, they're pretty chill. In terms of policing, I haven't really heard much about people policing it, police having road stops or anything like that. So that's nice. And also there's just really not that much traffic, like especially when you compare it to places like Thailand or Indonesia or Vietnam or other places that you might learn to scooter. Laos is very chill. And if it's on your list as a bigger piece of a Southeast Asia trip, I would really recommend, if you're comfortable enough to try learning how to scooter or getting better at scootering in Laos. The last thing I wanted to talk about today is typical prices. I'm gonna throw out some prices that I think will probably, like, I would say standard prices. And then if you're meeting those or beating those, then you know that you're not getting ripped off for one, and you know you're in like a good ballpark and you're you're kind of like making the most of your budget. So for scooter rentals, I would typically see about 180,000 for 24 hours. There's times where you could get that down to 140 or 150 if it was like a day thing. So 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. I was seeing 140, 150, but somewhere in that ballpark is typical for scooters. As for food, I was finding local sandwiches or banh mi, tofu and veggie. So it wasn't meat. Tofu and veggie were in and around 30,000. If you got the meat versions, they'd be more like 50-ish, give or take, for sandwiches just kind of on the side of the street. For meals at restaurants, I was looking more at like 50,000 to maybe 75,000 was the range that I would say is acceptable. Now you can go to nicer places and have nicer meals that cost more, but at your typical restaurant, you're going to be looking, somewhere from 50,000 to 75,000 kip for a meal. For beer, if you go to a convenience store like 7-Eleven or any of the, not that there's many, I think there's 2 7-Elevens in all of Laos, but any convenience store, you're probably looking at like 20,000 for a shout out Beer Lao. And then if you go to a restaurant and buy a beer, it's probably going to be more like 40, something like that. The hot air balloon experience that I paid for, because it is such a big ticket thing, I don't want you guys to get ripped off. I paid 2.1 million kip for mine, and that was with a local company. The above Lao charges about 145 US dollars, so I don't know exactly what that was in kip, but it was about 50% more, because I think I paid around 95 US dollars. So that's standard. I know a lot of places in town would want to charge you like 110, 120 US dollars for the local experience. Honestly, don't pay more than 90, 95. Because you can, and that's another tip, is all these prices that I'm talking about right now are negotiable. It is Lao. Outside of like walking into a convenience store and being like, I don't want to pay 20 for this beer, I want to pay 10. They're probably going to say no. But clothing, hot air balloons, scooter rentals, you can work with people on this. And, scooter rentals, hey, well, if I'm renting for 4 days, can you do something for me? Like that kind of stuff. All this stuff is usually negotiable to some extent. Especially if you know any of the local language and you can say things like, oh, too expensive in their local tongue, then like maybe you can work with them a little bit on prices. In Vang Vieng, I can't remember the prices in Luang Prabang, but in Vang Vieng, it was about 600,000 for most of the day tuk-tuk rental. So you just rent a tuk-tuk and they will take you wherever you want to go. That's kind of a fixed price. So if it's one person, it's 600. 2 people, come on in. 3 people, 4 people, 5 people, fill the tuk-tuk up, split the 600,000. They'll take you to Blue Lagoon 3 and 2 and 1 and 4 and the Namse viewpoint and this and that and kind of just whatever you want. And I was looking at in and around 600,000 for that, which that works out to 30 US dollars maybe for like 5 hours, 4 hours of tuk-tuking. So if you split that up, then it's pretty good. Those are some of the prices. I don't know all of the prices for all of the things, but if you have that as a ballpark, I think that that's a good enough understanding of like what typical prices should be, so you know, like on day one when you first get to the country, that you're not completely being ripped off. And those are my tips for you. I think we put 16 on the list. Hopefully you found at least one of those interesting. If you did, feel free to subscribe so that you see the next videos that come out. And liking the video always helps me understand what you guys like. It also helps the algorithms and so on. You know this. You've been to YouTube before. And with that, guys, thank you for watching this video. And until next time, see you soon.